What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down why tomorrow is going to be a very critical day for Tesla and the overall market because of the levels that we are seeing and because of the news that's coming out. I'm going to break down what's happening to Tesla with this breakout. We did break over 200 and whether or not we're going to continue pushing or not. I'm also going to break down what the news is telling us for Tesla, what's going on with the overall market and the data, and how all these things will affect us for tomorrow because it's a very critical day. Now, before I break anything down about that, before I get into any more details about tomorrow, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus free level 2 data with $0 in commissions for trading. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 6 days. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So anyways, Tesla's up 2.28% for the day, showing some very nice relative strength because both the QQQ and SPY were red, and we did see some bears take advantage of this opportunity as the VIX and the dollar index did try to break out today. Now, the real question is, are we going to see a big bounce tomorrow? I'm going to give you guys some insight on that. On the hourly time frame, I want to note this because this is very important on SPY. We've been respecting this channel, right? We've been going back and forth for the last couple of weeks, right? This is very, very strong and very important. Every time we actually touched the lower trend line, we got a really nice bounce on SPY and the market continued to push up. But this time we actually closed almost exactly where this trend line is at the bottom. So going into tomorrow, we need to see this thing bounce. We need to see some more bulls come in. We need to see some good news bring in maybe algos, see more buying in order for there to be an extra boost for Tesla and the market to continue pushing. Because if we break below this trend line, it's going to be the first time over the last few weeks that we are actually breaking down. And that's not going to be the best of signs for the bulls, and the bears, in my opinion, will take control of this opportunity. So that's why it's going to be so important. I will get into more details about the technicals in a couple of minutes, but I need to talk about some news and things like that first. Before I do that, remember that Tesla did break past 200 as I predicted, and I do believe it has the potential to continue, but the continuation is going to be dependent on the market, at least to some degree. Now, going into the market, I want to note something very important, and that is growth. You have to remember the fact that Tesla has gone through so many things, and Elon Musk does actually still tweet about Tesla every so often. And you could see right here, 10 years ago, Tesla had way, way, way lower amounts of sales compared to GM and Ford, and also net income for Tesla was very low. And today, Tesla's total sales are catching up, and Tesla's net income is actually higher right now. So very cool to see. And Elon Musk did mention that, I think somewhere here, that how times have changed. He is actually constantly still looking at these things. He is not just involved in Twitter. He still is involved in Tesla heavily, no matter what the media tries to say. I also want to note something else that's important. That's the fact that Tesla's Model Y and Model 3 are the top selling vehicles in California for all of 2022. This was just updated, and I think this was just reported very recently. The Tesla Model Y specifically is also very, very popular. It actually outsold the one of the Toyota's top models as well, the RAV4, and also the Camrys. Very, very incredible stuff to see this happening. We also saw over 87,000 of them sold with the sports utilities, and that, in my opinion, is just more good news about how they're expanding. I also want to note right here that when you look at the inventory levels, they're still at these low levels. And this is actually updated as of yesterday. So this means that that's a good sign for lots of investors because demand for these cars is still relatively high, no matter what the media was saying in the past. I also want to note that the price cuts are still working. Teslas are still a lot cheaper than what they were costing before. And this is really helping them from a fundamental standpoint. That's what's good about Tesla. It has a very good fundamental backing. The volume today was actually lower than the average volume, and despite that, we still saw this thing green relative to the market. That's very good because now it's not requiring as much volume to actually pump Tesla up. We're seeing bigger buy orders, and we're seeing more and more and more momentum that's really bringing in attention to this stock. I really like the setup so far. On top of that, despite the fact that there was the volume we saw a slight decrease in the short volume percentage, but we are continuing to see it at this higher place, which means that we are seeing sellers and also an increase in short volume. Now, looking at the other pieces of data, price pairs ratio is still climbing. This means that there's still even more relative strength. Tesla is still heavily outperforming the market, and that's a very good sign for investors. RBC Capital is now giving Tesla a buy rating, saying it's going to outperform the market. And we are seeing this thing consistently just killing during earnings like this, beating the estimates over and over again. I also want to note that during a time like this on Thursdays, Tesla tends to not be as strong on Thursdays and Fridays. Tesla's only green 47% of the time, but we do have some nice momentum. And if the market gets a bounce, this could actually change pretty quickly. Like today, Tesla was a little slow in the morning, wasn't as crazy in the morning, but then we did slowly see this thing pick up as the time went on. Specifically during the 4th and 6th hours, Tesla tends to do a little bit better, and we tend to see it take its time to really push up. So be a little bit patient with the stock. Don't expect it to just explode immediately. And when you watch it, be very mindful of what the overall market is doing simultaneously. Right now, I'm seeing the short interest is still consistently decreasing. This is telling me that there is a bit of a squeeze going on for Tesla. Maybe it's not the biggest factor driving it in, especially because we just broke 200, so there could be more buyers coming in. But there are some shorts getting squeezed out of their position, starting to exit, and they don't really like to see this happening. And I really believe that this is a good sign as well for investors, because as the shorts get squeezed out, they start to hedge by buying back those shares, and the act of them closing positions, it also helps Tesla push up. So that is pretty good in my opinion, because of the delta hedging that could be going on and because of shorts getting squeezed out of their positions. Now, even though Tesla's looking so awesome and so strong, I'm very impressed by it. I also believe that, look, Tesla was only up 2% today. It could have been up 5, 6, 7% in my opinion after breaking 200. I just think that what happened was the overall market did start to bleed and start coming down. So that slowed Tesla down to some degree. I do believe that if the market was green, if the market pushed up pretty hard, Tesla could have been even more green than this. I really believe the market has a big effect on it, as it does with most stocks out there. And that's why it's very important to remember what the market is doing. Now, big earnings came out. Disney did beat expectations, and their streaming subscribers are actually at a lower loss than they expected. So, very, very awesome news for Disney. And we did see them beat on both revenue and EPS. Once again, very, very impressive stuff. They do have strong fundamentals. And as a result of that, this could be positive for the stock market. But one thing that I really need to note is the fact that when you look at the fear and greed index, this thing was extremely greedy just yesterday. Now it's actually on the greed side. It is still at one of the highest levels of greed we have seen in over a year. Now, when you see the market this greedy, this does tend to mark tops, because if everyone is just buying in and starting to FOMO in, we tend to see the opposite reaction over time. Remember, smart money still does not fully trust this rally. And by smart money, I'm talking about institutions. Does that mean that they're not participating? The answer is no. And what it does tell us, though, is that their confidence inflows is not as high as it is for retail. So I'm still very cautious, and I still stand by what I've said in the past, and that is that the market is in a topping process. I just couldn't predict exactly where the top would be, because it's very dependent on many different factors. And that's why I have to mention that tomorrow is going to be super important. Now, for tomorrow, the first thing to remember is before the market opens, we have Hilton, we have Kellogg's, we have Toyota reporting earnings. And then after the market closes, we have PayPal and Lyft and a bunch of other ones. PayPal is going to be very, very important. I think it will have an effect on the QQQ and the performance, because when we see earnings like this, especially for a giant like PayPal, it will affect sentiment quite heavily for more investors all over the world. Now, finally, what else is very big about tomorrow is initial jobless claims is coming out, and the consensus right now is about let me see, 190,000. We want to see at least somewhere around that number, if not higher. That's what the market is going to want to see, because we want to see some pain from the job sector. As one of the Fed speakers said, even Jerome Powell said this, with the strong jobs numbers, there is an increased probability of inflation being a little bit higher. In a hypothetical situation, and this is what Jerome Powell said, in a hypothetical situation with high job growth and higher inflation than expected, the Fed would have to be more hawkish and maybe raise rates even higher than they initially expected. So that's the reason why the market wants there to be a little bit more pain from the job sector. Let's hope for that in the opening for tomorrow. Now, we did have many Fed speakers speaking today. I think we have more coming out tomorrow. It doesn't really say their names, but for sure there will be more on Friday. So be on the lookout for that. If they say some very hawkish things, it could lead to more volatility. Now, what am I seeing for tomorrow in the charts? This is where things become very important. I want to note that on the hourly, like I said before, we still have this trend being respected on SPY. We need to respect this trend, and we need to see SPY get a nice bounce tomorrow. We actually have a gap around 415, so there is an increased probability of that happening. So far, earnings are supporting it, and the last thing that we really need to see is the jobless claims numbers come out to support it, followed by the VIX and the dollar index starting to like cool off a bit. I would say that would help us. And if this does get a really nice bounce, this would actually help not just Tesla, but the collective market. The same thing could be said about the QQQ or the triple Q. We do have this gap down here, so I don't know if we're going to come down maybe to fill this gap first before getting a bounce. And I do believe there's another gap up above somewhere. I want to note that it's very important that we do end up remaining very, very cautious during times like these, because the market is in what I believe to be a topping process before we do start to fill lots of gaps to the downside and before the market does reverse. I do believe the market will reverse in the future. I just don't know the exact dates, and CPI is going to be very, very telling. So be ready for CPI. It's just 6 days away from today. It's less than like a couple of trading days away as well. Now, I also want to note that the VIX, this is very important. The VIX was trying to break out today. This was the implied volatility being measured by for the S&P 500. As the S&P 500 was dropping, we saw implied volatility go up, and the VIX was trying to get that breakout out of this wedge. So far, we haven't actually broken out of it, but we really tried to, and we came close to actually doing so. We broke out of it temporarily, then came right back down. If this thing gets a breakout, it's going to be very bearish for the stock market, and that could slow Tesla down. But if we get a bounce in the stock market, this thing could also come right back down just a little bit more, maybe come down to this 18, back to the high 18s, 18.5 level. It could actually do that first before it does get the breakout eventually. But we need to see that happen for there to be hope for a bounce in the stock market. So please watch the VIX very carefully. It's very important. We also got lots of rejections off 20, so we have major resistance on it. Very important to note. Now, the dollar index is pretty flat for the day. I did predict that we might see it come down to retest the wedge before this thing finally breaks out. And because it pushed up the way it did, especially near the end of the day, it could be setting up for a bit of a pullback. If that does happen, right? Hypothetically, if it does end up happening, that could be good for the bulls out there. And I do think it's very likely. But like I said before, you have to zoom out and look at the trend, right? When you zoom out, you have to look at the fact that we had this falling wedge and we finally broke out of it. This is significant because if it keeps going, if this thing keeps breaking out, which I think it eventually will, it's going to be bearish for the stock market. Maybe going into the second half of February, going into March, there are some bearish signals coming out for the stock market. So what do I think is going to happen? I do believe that the market is likely, it's in a topping process. I don't know if we've already topped and we're going to start heading down, or if we're going to try to get one last push to the upside and kind of hold these levels until CPI. It's very hard to predict, but I do believe that the market is going to form a top very soon and start to slow down. So please be ready for that. What does all of this data mean for Tesla? Well, the bottom line is Tesla is kind of running on its own. It's not as impacted by the market as it was before because Tesla has a lot more relative strength. Now we did end up having this like bullish triangle like setup. We've been holding it out pretty well. We got a breakout above the 200, and I do believe that typically if that happened, this thing could have actually flown even higher. The whole market slowing down did affect it to some degree. I believe for tomorrow, it's going to be very dependent on the market. I think if the market gets a really nice bounce, if it truly does get a big bounce and the market has some more room to go, I think Tesla has the potential to get all the way back up to 205, then maybe 209, followed by the 215 level maybe a little bit later. The odds of us actually reaching this level become higher if the market gets the bounce, because that's where the 200 EMA is on the daily. Now, I also want to note, and just in case some bad news comes out or the market collapses, just for example, we also need to go over the bearish possibility. The bearish possibility tells us that we have some support at 200, and between 200 and 198 is where we have some support. If we break below that, then we have this 195 level followed by 189 to 190. So please watch these levels very carefully just in case the opposite reaction comes. But I just want to note that my anticipation is that that is not going to happen. I think what's most likely going to happen is Tesla's going to chop a bit up here and slowly fight for 205. And if we get a clean break, it depends on the market from that point. Maybe Tesla's going to be kind of choppy and try to hit 205, but if the market is trading sideways, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for Tesla to really break out hard. But if the market gets the bounce that I've been anticipating, if the market truly does see a very, very beautiful setup and the market sees another attempt to fill its gaps, then we could actually see Tesla go for the breakout, and Tesla could actually get to at least 205 to 209 pretty quickly, and maybe as soon as tomorrow. And if we break that, I mean, like I said before, we have two major levels I want to watch for, and that's going to be on the daily. Basically, we don't have to worry about these like lines or anything like that. When you look at the EMAs, okay, the 200 EMAs at about 215. Every time Tesla had these breakouts, we actually tend to get very close to, if not a little bit above, the 200 EMA, and that happens to be at 215. I do think that if we have enough momentum and we do see a bullish continuation, Tesla could actually get there. And this could be a level for many traders to start taking some profits. Now, another level is if we do end up breaking this, we could look at the 200 moving average, which is actually a little bit different. And this tends to be a little bit closer to where Tesla tends to get stopped out at, or maybe slow down a bit at. And that's going to be at 227. So 225 to 227 is going to be another important level if we do end up breaking the 200 EMA at 215. Then I could see Tesla going all the way up here, but it's going to be very dependent on other factors, such as how the market performs and also the news that comes out and other things like that. But as of right now, from a technical standpoint on the daily, Tesla's looking bullish. We got a very nice wide open MACD. I also like the RSI. I think it's showing that it's like overbought or something. I believe it's actually showing that, but that actually has shown to not matter as much for a stock like Tesla that develops all this strength and all this momentum as more buyers come in. So I believe the most likely thing right now is, as long as this thing continues to hold above 200 and keeps on maintaining the strength, I could actually see this thing try to go above 205, above maybe 209, and then get to at least 215 as of right now. I'm going to try to be a little bit conservative with this target, but we could always break that. If we do break it, 225 to 227 becomes more likely if we break the 200 EMA. I think it's very likely we're going to try to do that. I think lots of buyers are coming in. The news, the sentiment is actually a lot more positive for Tesla than before. And I don't really have any confirmation of Elon Musk selling. I know some people have talked about that. So as of right now, I do consider myself a lot more bullish than bearish for Tesla. And I think we have lots of potential to come. So anyways, that's what I have for this video. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for listening. Please have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. And just note that for the market as a whole, the whole like bullish trend is technically not dead as of right now. The MACD still suggests that SPY has more room possibly, but it is starting to curl a bit, right? It is curling a little bit, so it is slowing down. But once again, we could get another pop all the way back up to about 415 on SPY, which would help Tesla even more. But we have to wait and see how tomorrow goes first. So I'm really hoping for a bounce that can really help Tesla. That's what I have for this video. I hope you guys have an incredible rest of the day. I appreciate every single one of you. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still very bright. And peace out.